Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast. My name is John Sanders. This is episode number 87, and we're titling this one, Don't Fear Asking for the Sale. In this episode, you're going to hear myself and my co-host, Les Hughes, have a conversation that is really pertinent, especially for pastors who are starting a business of their own. One thing I say all the time is that, as a general rule, pastors have been taught to devalue their time. They are overworked and underpaid. That's not an overstatement. It's the truth. Like, most pastors work way more than what they get paid to do, and as a result of that, and just a lot of the expectations that get thrown on them, they're kind of taught to devalue their time. And so, as we help pastors launch businesses, it's not uncommon to run into pastors that really struggle to ask for the sale. And there's a lot of mindset stuff around making sales and selling products and services, and actually having people pay you for the work that you're doing and pay a reasonable price. And so in this episode, you're going to hear us talk about why this is so important to just be bold in asking for the sale. If you are a business with no sales, you go out of business. And we don't want that for you. We want your business to be profitable. And so much of that has to do with the mindset that you have around making sales and what that means and how to be bold in asking for those sales. So I know this is going to be a good one for you. Sit back, relax. Here we go. Let's do this thing. Buckle up, get your seatbelts on, because today's topic is gonna rock some worlds a little bit. Depending on your background and where you've been in ministry, this may be a little bit. This may challenge you a little bit. Nothing like too controversial. We're not going to be controversial, are we, Les?
No. But it will be. It's gonna. I promise you, when we say what it is, it's going to give some people butterflies.
Yeah, and people are.
It's funny because people in ministry, man. Our tribe as pastors, we can be as bold as a tiger from the stage, you know.
Yep.
When it's thus saith the Lord, look out, get your seatbelt on and just hang on. But when it comes to this topic, it's kind of amazing how we can get a little sheepish.
Yeah, totally. And that's why we need to talk about it. So
that's right.
Here at Entree Pastors, we help pastors launch businesses in the marketplace. We think that a great way to financial freedom and having multiple streams of revenue is not just getting your church to give you more money out of the offering plates or offering buckets, but not that there's anything wrong with being paid from your church. We want to be clear on that, but we are fans. We think it's a good thing when pastors are out in the marketplace launching a business. The earning potential is, just greatly magnified for you, and that ceiling is removed when you go out on your own in the marketplace and have a business. Like, there's no board of deacons or elders or, overseers that are kind of looking over your shoulder going, ugh, we can't pay you, pastor. Like, we're just not comfortable with that. So today, this topic in episode 87, we're going to title this, Don't Fear Asking for the Sale. We're going to talk to an issue that we see a lot of our tribe struggle with, to be quite blunt, Les. As we come alongside of pastors and help them launch businesses, we can see pastors taking a lot of action toward getting their businesses up and off the ground, but we see a lot of people kind of get stuck at this point. And need I point out the obvious, Les, that if you have a business that is not making sales, that's a business that's going out of business pretty quickly. Is that common sense enough? Like, we all understand that, right?
Yep. You said it. You do not have a business if you don't find a way to ask for the sale. You just don't. Recently, I heard a quote by Jerry Jones, the owner of the Cowboys. I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have the quote in front of me, but it's fairly easy to paraphrase. Okay. Somebody asked him what the most important things were about business, and he said, well, there were three things. One was that you have to figure out how to close the sale. In other words, I think the way he put it is, you got to ask for money. Mm-hmm. In some way, shape, or form, you've got to ask for money. And he said the other two, he couldn't actually remember. So, I mean, there's the closing the sale, and then there's closing the sale, and then there's closing the sale. One, two,
Yeah.
three. And the people, even John, that we've talked about, the business it won't get off the ground if you can't figure out a way how to ask for the sale, and it's okay.
Yeah. That's just the simple reality of it.
Yeah.
Without sales, you're not in business. Without sales, you have a hobby or a passion or a nonprofit. And we don't want that for you. We want you to be profitable and to have a new stream of revenue that's coming into your family and blessing you in ways that you never thought possible financially, while you were kind of in the traditional role of full-time pastor, for those of you that applies to. And so you got to have sales. Without a business, without sales, there is no business. So today,
John,
go ahead.
let me just excuse me for a second, but even with nonprofits, I mean, the best nonprofits that I know of, they're out there asking for the sale.
For sure.
I mean, because they believe, in their mission. They believe in their purpose, and so we'll get to that. But part of asking for that sale, part of the closing is, man, you got to believe in the value of what you're putting out there.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. And it's kind of goes to a bigger theme in all of this, is that it doesn't really matter what you're doing. We're all in sales, right? And so this isn't as scary. Maybe that's good news, because maybe this is not as scary to those pastors that can boldly get up on a platform and make a sale of a different sort, by trying to influence and persuade someone to make a decision in their life, whether it's a decision for salvation and faith in Christ, or a decision for repentance or life change and transformation, whatever that is. They can boldly say it there, and then they get into the business world and just terrified of having that conversation. So the good news is, you don't get out of selling. We're all selling something. But
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me push back a little bit. What about the person that says, no, you just don't get it. I'm telling you, I am not a salesperson. I mean, I'm not good at it. It makes me uncomfortable. I'm not a salesperson. You would say what?
I would say we're going to get to that person. So you hold on, just hold your horses, Les. We're going to get there. Okay?
You went there. You approached the subject. I was just helping you out, man.
No, well, I think we're pitching different balls in different times here. So I want to just say this question. This is all I'm trying to get out there. We want to wrestle with the question: why do pastors struggle with selling? That's really what we want to kind of wrestle with in this episode, is because we think there are a few things we can point to, Les, that we're both getting ahead of ourselves because we're so excited to have this conversation. But we do think there's some things we can point to that will be helpful, where we can shed some light on this. So let's riff on this one for a little bit. Why do pastors struggle with selling? Now you can say whatever you want to say, Les.
Well, first of all, this is a matter of perception, but it does have an impact on whether we're successful or not. So the perception is that if I'm selling something, then I'm taking, let's say it's currency, it's money. So if I'm selling something, that's, in our minds, we think I'm benefiting more than, or in a different way than, the person that's handing me money, rather than see it as a value exchange. When I go into a place, I mean, we do it online a lot now, but when I go online and order, I just ordered a cabinet, a kind of a pantry cabinet for my wife for her birthday. I didn't feel like I was getting cheated. It was I did my homework. I found a good price for a good product. I read the reviews, and I had no problem whatsoever sending them my money. And when it came, guess what? I was gratified that I had paid for something that was worth what I gave money for. And now it's in our, pantry room and full of good stuff for us and our grandkids. That's a value exchange. But when it comes to selling, and it's, especially if it's new to us, then there's a sense that it's, I'm going to gain something. I'm not so sure that they're gaining the same value that they're given. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we see it as a win-lose proposition. We have a perception that says I'm winning because I made the sale, and unfortunately they're losing because they gave me their money. And that ties into another thing. These are all connected, by the way, Les, every one of these. So we can just flow from one into another. But We want to pause here long enough to say, and this may sound cliche, but this is more than just a fancy statement. It's truth that selling is serving. If you show up with integrity, if you show up with a product that you believe in and that you know can help the person you're selling to, selling is serving. You're not twisting someone's arm. You're not being deceptive. You're not being manipulative. You are serving that customer, that client, whoever that is you're selling to. You are serving them by making that sale. And again, I think pastors can do this really well because of the people skills that generally are there. I know a few pastors that lack people skills, but for the most part, most pastors have really honed that skill well, and they can serve their customers in business because they recognize selling is serving.
And that should be good news to people
Yeah.
that have some sort of background in ministry, because we're all about serving other people. But something that they believe that they're exchanging what they value with what they will value once they receive it and then can use it. You know, Zig Ziglar is one of those individuals he's so highly respected and endeared to people that have a ministry background because he was so kingdom minded, and loved the body of Christ and loved the Lord and had a high respect for pastors. And he was also highly respected in the marketplace, especially because of his communication skills, but also his success as a salesperson. And when he made that statement that is often quoted, if you want to really get what you want in life, then help enough other people get what they want. He was saying that not in a leveraging or a manipulative kind of way. He was saying that as a salesperson, because he started out as a door-to-door brush salesman. And when he says help enough people get what they want, some people wanted a brush and needed a brush. And so he was helping them get what they wanted. And there was an exchange there that they paid him money, and inevitably he sold a lot of those, or pots and pans, or whatever it was that he was selling before he became an author and a speaker primarily. That's what he's getting at, though.
Yep.
Help enough people get what they want, and you can get what you want.
Yep. Well, then this leads into another one of the things that we mentioned, or as you and I were kind of talking about this before we hit record. One of the things that causes pastors to struggle in selling is sometimes they do fail to see the value in either the thing that they're selling, the product or the service that they're selling. And Les, I have a theory on this. You may not agree with me, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I've said it before. I'm on record as saying, I think that for the average pastor that has served for many years inside of the traditional church, one of the ramifications of that is that by default, they have been taught to devalue their time. They have been taught to devalue their service that they give. Not that intellectually they don't know that what they do is helping people, but I honestly think that, and I'm painting with a broad brush, we could find many exceptions to this, but generally speaking, I think that the church as a whole has taken so much for granted that pastors do. It place so much expectation. There's a lot of thanklessness around pastoring people, shepherding people, that after years and years in that role, many pastors have just come to really devalue themselves and the work that they do. And so then when they switch gears into the marketplace, that mindset goes with them. And they really have a hard time, again, selling, because it's like, well, man, what am I selling? I'm used to getting, I'm giving of my time and my efforts for next to nothing. And now I'm supposed to find a way to put a value on it. So I think there's a connection there. What say you?
Sure. I think that's a valid point. And I've experienced this myself a couple of times. And I'm grateful that we have search engines that we can clear up any ambiguity in this way. So if you want to, pastors or missionaries, people with a ministry background, if you want to know how much public speakers make, or copywriters make, or coaches or counselors, public speaker, instant speaking, but writers, if you want to know how much those people make, you can do searches and find out. John, when I was researching writing and ghostwriting, I just did some Google searches. Man, my jaw dropped when I saw what professional ghostwriters make. And because I just had no idea, you know. So and here's the thing that I know when I'm talking to people about fees or what things will cost, I know that if they go and do the same search that I did, they're going to discover the same thing that I discovered. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just one example. I could give you some more, but that data is out there. Now, if you're twice as much as what is common, out in the marketplace, there's some concern there. But there's a way to find out, what those numbers are.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you realize that out in the marketplace, things are valued a little bit differently than they are inside the four walls of a church. And so that's some reprogramming, retraining, renewing
Yeah.
of the mind that needs to happen. Because again, if you don't see the value in either yourself or the product or service that you're selling, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Then it plays in, it feeds on that perception, that flawed perception of, I'm getting something of greater value because I got money and all they got was me, or all they got was my service. And we need to help you see that as a win-win for both you and the customer. I wanted to move on to something that you were so excited to share earlier, and then we were scolding each other about it. But it's that flawed narrative, or we may call it unhelpful or unhealthy self-talk. And that's the thing you mentioned earlier, Les. It's that pastor, and again, this isn't just pastors that fall into this, but that person that tells themselves, "Oh, I'm just not a salesperson." Easy for you to say, Les and John, like, sure, don't be afraid of asking for the sale, but you don't understand. I'm not a salesperson. I hate sales. And again, I think the answer earlier, you asked how I would answer that. I would say we can absolutely change that narrative. That is not a statement of truth. That is a story that you're telling yourself. And the more you tell yourself that story, the more you believe it. And the more your subconscious mind works overtime to keep your life in alignment with that story that you've been saying. So therefore, I'll do everything I can to avoid making the sale and asking for that. I'll do everything I can to fail when it comes time to have that sales conversation, because my subconscious brain is going to go, "Oh, remember, we hate sales. So let's don't have a successful outing here. Let's make sure that we sabotage any potential success." So I reject it. I think that's my simple answer to your question. What would I say to that person? I reject your story, and you should too. You can write a new story for your life. Maybe the story changes to, "I'm not great at sales yet," or "in the past, I have not been comfortable with selling, but that's changing," or "that has changed." And you begin to speak a new reality into your by faith that the future can be different than my past. That's my answer to that question, Les. We need to have a more helpful self-talk when we let those narratives come into our mind.
I think that's a great response. And I also think that when people say that, John, I don't believe they always mean the same thing. In other words, if somebody says, "Well, I'm not a good salesperson," it could mean that it feels awkward to them and it feels foreign to them because they're not used to doing it. But that doesn't have any bearing on whether they're quote good at it. What are we saying? Well, I'm not a salesperson. We're probably saying some version of it feels a little weird, it feels a little awkward to me. Or maybe, when I was a kid, I was made to go door to door to sell whatever chocolate covered, mints or sour ball candy or something. And I got a lot of rejections and doors slammed in my face. Well, here, if what we mean by "I'm not a good salesperson" is that we haven't had success in the past, there's good news. It is a skill set that can be learned.
Yeah.
There are scripts, there are ways, there's a psychology of it. And that doesn't mean, again, there's an authenticity that we can have and still just understand the way people think. Just as when you or I walk into somewhere, or if we're talking to someone over the telephone, most people can sniff out inauthenticity.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that one of the parts of this learned skill is to just be authentic and be honest, and don't do a bait and switch with people. If you're talking to someone, or if you schedule a conversation because you want to make an offer, then be honest about that up front, and lead with that. And then you can go talking about something else and catch up if it's somebody that you know. But don't call and ask them how they're doing and how the wife and how the kids are doing. And then, oh, by the way, let me tell you that,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's right away. You've just told them that you've lied to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a pretty strong word, but I mean, it's when you, a lie is when you intend to deceive, and you didn't call to check on their family. You called to make an offer, and
Mm-hmm.
making the offer is okay,
Yep.
but don't try to hide it, or do a bait and switch, because then you're almost saying that you feel funny about it, not, or at least not in a way that you can lead with it or be honest about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And maybe that's a whole new category we could add to this, that we've all probably experienced someone trying to sell us in a way that lacked integrity. And
Mhm.
so it can put a negative thought in our mind, or a negative taste in our mouth for what selling is, when we've experienced it outside of integrity and honesty. And so then therefore we just lump, well, all sales must be this way. And that's certainly not the truth. There's, again, many times that I have been sold, and it's been a pleasurable experience because that person was serving me, and they sold with integrity and honesty, and it was a great experience. And as you said earlier, I was happy to get out my, debit card, my cash, whatever, and make that transaction, because I walked away feeling like I got value from that whole process. But if it lacks that, then yeah, everyone comes away from it feeling like, I need to go take a shower because this felt gross.
Yeah. It's like
So
that time you were in New York and bought that Rolex for $50. Remember that? I mean,
yeah,
that's a great value that you got for a great product.
I got to tell that story so people know that it's totally fictional. But when I was in New York City, I was finishing up speaking at a conference in Pennsylvania last May, and I had a chance to go spend a little time in Manhattan at Ground Zero, which was a really meaningful day. But anyway, I sent Les a message via Voxer, which is a way Les and I communicate often for Entre Pastor stuff. And I was like, Les, I got such great news. I just found this guy that had Rolex watches. And I don't know if I said we were getting them for the
I
everyone
don't
in the
know.
mastermind or on our team or whatever, but I was like, something about what did I say? I couldn't use my debit card. He needed me to go to a cash machine and get the cash, and just it sounded very legit. And you
Yeah.
didn't fall for it for a second. You knew I was smarter than that, right, Les?
Yeah, of course.
I was like, he opened his coat and they were all just hanging right there, and it was awesome. But
Uh,
I made the whole thing up, Les. I didn't really buy any Rolexes in New York, but
I'm
that
so
would have been
gullible.
shyster stuff, though. That would have felt sleazy. So I wouldn't have done it. But all right, so let's talk about another thing. And I'm just going to call this one what it is. I think many pastors, let's just add Christians as a whole, I think many Christians have a flawed mindset around money. They've bought into this narrative that money is this icky, dirty, gross thing. They don't read their Bibles, so they often quote what the world says, that money is the root of all evil. And that's not what Scripture teaches. Scripture says the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And as you say often, Les, money is a terrible God, but it's a great tool. So we don't worship it. We don't love it in a sense that we, should not love money. But we also recognize that money in the hands of good people can do a lot of good. And God is not upset when people apply themselves and work hard and earn money and build wealth. God's not mad at people who are rich. There's, we don't see, and if you've been using that language your whole life, those, filthy rich people, dirty rich people, like, guess what? You're not going to want to be a dirty rich anybody or a filthy rich anybody. And so when we have this flawed mindset around money, there's a lot of pastors that are going to struggle to ever be successful in business, because until they change that flawed thinking that says it's not okay for me to have wealth and be wealthy, because then I'm going to be one of those people. And so you need to really do some self-examination there, Pastor. Like, we're not just asking, do you feel desperate, financially living paycheck to paycheck? I'm asking, are you comfortable with abundance? My Bible says Jesus came to give us a life that is abundant. And are you comfortable with that? Like, are you good if God pours out his abundance into your life? I would contend he already has, but can you hold more of it? And if so, like, good, because until you're really comfortable with that, you're going to maybe struggle with selling, because somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this, voice saying this is not okay. So what say you to that, Les?
Well, I agree with that. And also, you know, really do your best not to prejudge what somebody will say because you don't believe that they have the resources, or that they possess the wealth to purchase what it is that you have and what it is that
Mm.
you're selling. If you believe that strongly enough, or you're in an environment where you really don't believe, maybe you've got anecdotal evidence where enough people have said, "Ah, you're talking to the wrong person." Okay, well, it may be time to go and fish in a different pond. Okay. But it could be, and I would say this early on, you don't know where somebody is until they respond and tell you. Like, in my opinion, John, and this is our experience too, it's a big mistake to assume what somebody might do, or what they're able to do, until you had that conversation with them,
Yeah.
because you just don't know. I mean, I've um I've experienced this on both ends, you know. Um People sometimes come into money and
Hmm.
are looking for things to do with it. And
Hmm.
you can't always determine, just because of what somebody drives, or where they live, what they may be or may not be capable of.
For sure.
That's a mindset issue.
For sure. There's a story that pops into my head as you're saying that, Les, that years ago, when I was just getting started in my coaching business, I was selling a mastermind for small town rural church pastors. And it was $500 a month was what I was asking for that investment. And I had a coaching call with a pastor in small town Missouri, a town of 300 people, not a church, a town of 300 people, a much smaller church than that. And right out of the gate, I'm in my mind, there's that voice going, this guy can't afford you. He's young, he's newly married, like he doesn't have any money. And yet I had the mental discipline to push that voice out and go, I'm going to serve this guy to the best of my ability, regardless of my thought of his ability to pay. And I had 2 coaching conversations with him. And before the second one was done, he flat out said, so what's next? Like, how do I join? How do I become a part of this? And this is where, again, I thought, okay, this is where we're going to part ways. And when I let him know the price of being involved in my mastermind, he didn't bat an eyelash. He said, where do I sign up? Come to find out, this guy had plenty of money from his family growing up. He had some resources that did not come from pastoring a church of 30 people in a town of 300. And guess what? He was a wonderful client. We spent a little over a year and a half together, and loved working with him. And so it's that whole thing of what you're saying. Don't say someone's no for them. Don't get weird about the money, man. Like just don't tell yourself those narratives around money. Have a healthy mindset around money. Serve people whether you believe they can pay you or not. And by the way, it's creepy when you're extra nice to the people who you think have all the money. Like, they can smell that too from a mile
Sure.
away. They can smell that
Sure.
flattery.
Hey, let me share one with you that's very recent. So this has happened within the last 6 to 8 weeks, probably.
Okay.
Um, I don't do, just like you, I don't do much one-on-one coaching anymore, for various reasons. We've moved sort of beyond that in many ways, but I'm not opposed to it, especially if it's somebody that is a referral from someone that I know, or I
Sure.
really believe that I can help someone. I want to do that just like you will. Sometimes we pray about it, we feel
Sure.
like God's in it. Okay, let's roll. And so there was somebody that a friend of ours actually referred to me, but and he's not a pastor, but he's got a real heart for the kingdom. He loves the Lord, and he's missional in the way that he thinks. So I knew some of this individual's background, but again, we just don't have a ton of bandwidth, because of the other things that we're focused on. So but I did have a conversation with him. I really liked this guy, and I believed that I could help him. And so I wanted to make a proposal that was fair. It's not like I can say, yeah, well, one session is this much and two sessions that much, because again, we just don't do a lot of one-on-one coaching anymore. And so I thought, well, I want to make it worth my while, because I don't want to show up in a begrudging sort of way, or else dread it, say, oh no, here we go.
Right.
So I really wanted to make it but I didn't want to make it, I felt like I kind of knew where this guy was on a, kind of on an economic scale. I knew where he lived. And so I wanted to do something that wasn't going to take advantage,
Mhm.
And so I put something out there. Here's the part you're going to love. He almost, at least he thought about not actually entering into the coaching relationship. He ended up doing it, by the way, and we're still talking, but he almost didn't, because I came in a little low.
Mm.
And so what he did was he thought, well, he had actually been paying someone else more than what I told him I would do it for. And in his mind, he's like, well, what is he not a very good coach? Because he didn't ask as much as a lot of these other individuals are. So of course I'm kicking myself thinking, you dummy. No, I really didn't. It was fine. It was fine either way. And it was still a fair, what I thought was fair to me. It was fair to him, and we went with it. But that goes to show you, and I hope somebody's listening that really is, playing those mental games. You just don't know where somebody else is and what their mindset's going to be.
Yep. That's good, man. And so it all gets back to that flawed money mindset. We see many pastors that need to do some work around that area in their life. Again, Christians as a whole probably fall into that, but certainly pastors that have been in that world for a long time often don't come to us with a lot of health in that arena. So we do some work around that. Yeah. Here's one of the last things we wanted to touch on before we wrap it up this week, Les. And you brought this one to the table, and I like it. As soon as you said it and started explaining it, I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You used the word pride. So why do pastors struggle with sales? You said pride, but it's not the pride in the sense that we think of it like an arrogance pride. It's more of I don't want to appear needy, which by the way is a good thing in sales. If you come to a sales conversation needy, people will smell that a mile away, and it's off-putting and it's gross. So we don't want to show up like with this desperation, and you can say more to this, but here's what went through my mind when you said that. It's almost like a pastor who feels that he's doing something that's a little bit below him or her. Like, I'm better than this. I'm a pastor. And that's my identity. That's who I am. And look at me. I'm out here trying to sell this thing. How far have I fallen? And that's kind of what I heard when you said pride. It was like that. And again, whether it's pity of poor me, look what I have to go do, or I'm better than this. Like, is that what you meant, or what would you add to that? Give me some more commentary around that.
It's not what I meant. Not exactly anyway. But I like that. I think you're spot on. I have felt that way before. I've sensed that in a different season, and that's for a different day. We've shared some of those things, you and I both have, and I know that you can speak to it if you want to from that perspective in a moment. But what I was really getting at was a different form, I suppose. So when a pastor goes out, say he's asked out to lunch with someone, and I'm sharing this, all the people that are church members and you have a relationship with your pastor, this is not to be, to assume you've got ulterior motives or intentions. I'm just letting you know, as a pastor, this is the way it goes a lot of times. And it's not only pastors, it's people that are in a position of influence, or that have a large network of people, or who are successful and, been around a while. Here's the way it goes. Hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. And so you just go and grab a cup of coffee or grab a lunch, and somewhere in the conversation, they're going to get to the reason that they really wanted to talk with you. And there are some exceptions, but it's very rare for them to say, hey, I wanted to, bring you out here because I got something that I want to do for you. Mm. Usually it is, let me tell you something that here's what I'm going to show you what I need, share with you what I need. Mm. And it could be talking to somebody in your church that's on the senior council, on the city council, and they feel like you've got some influence, and there's a building that they're trying to get inspected or that won't pass code. These are random kinds of things, or it could be something, it could be ministry related. It could be, not many people know this, but man, my wife and I are really struggling, and man, we need some help, or our teenager is doing this. And so it's the legitimate reasons. And you know what, if for the pastors that I'm talking to, you want to serve those people, you want to shepherd those people, you want to step into that, be there for them, pray with them, hurt with them, help carry that load, help carry that burden. And I commend you, and I want to affirm you when you step into a situation like that. So, Jon, when we go into a conversation like that, we're thinking about
Mm.
how we can serve and how we can give. And if that ever turns to where there's a perception that we need something from somebody else, back to the start of this conversation, if sales to you is, I need something from them, and you're used to giving, that's going to be a problem. That's what I meant by pride.
Oh, gotcha. You don't want to be the recipient of, or you don't want to be the giver of what you feel like you've been the recipient of
Yeah.
at times in your
Yep.
ministry careers, what you're saying on that level of pride. So we can both be right on that one.
Oh,
They're
what you
both valid.
described is absolutely valid.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, that's where, like with Entre Pastors as a whole, we want to get to the point where we celebrate this, man. This is not poor you out in the marketplace. You couldn't quite make it as a pastor. You get to be out here, man. Like, it's a privilege to be out here in the marketplace. There's some real advantages that you can have access to as you continue to do ministry and serve people. It just pays a little better, quite a bit better out here in the marketplace. So this isn't a poor you. We feel sorry for you because you have to go to work and own a business or serve people in a different way. But
there you go. It's serving. Just think of it as serving. And let me give you can I give you another example before we sort of wrap it up? This happened just today. I was listening to a podcast today where there was I'm not going to say who it is yet, because Lord willing, we may have him on our podcast at some point. But this is a very successful pastor, and I'm using success with a caveat that he has that appearance to people that are in his church and in the world. So it's a large church, a growing ministry. If you listen to his message, he's not what's the word I'm looking for? He's not a health and wealth kind of guy. He's just a pastor of an evangelical growing church he carries himself well. He's eloquent. He's a really good communicator, but he's starting to venture off into what we would refer to as the marketplace more, the non-Christian marketplace, I'll say. He's writing, he's got a leadership podcast, and not only Christian leadership podcast, it's just leadership. Now, a lot of people would look at what he's doing and say, hey, bro, man, what are you doing? God called you to pastor that church, and now you're writing, you're doing all that. It's not a Christian publisher, but here's the beautiful thing about this, Jon. As I began to really look at what he's doing, and then I listened to his message, and he was talking about a book that he had worked on. And if you were to pick up that book, look at the front cover, the title, look at the back jacket, you wouldn't necessarily think that that's a gospel-centered book. I can almost guarantee you it is. And so what he is doing in maybe a not so subtle way, I could see it, is that he's stepping off into the marketplace, not only to create some extra streams of revenue for him and his family. That's fine. But man, I heard in his description of that book, and I ordered the book, that there are nuggets of the gospel in there, and I can see where that's going. And there are people that are going to pick that book up and read it or listen to his podcast. They won't go to his church, but they will overhear the gospel when they pick up some of those other resources. And to me, and we say this, we talk about this, it's all ministry.
Yep.
If God called you to be a shepherd, to be a pastor, you are, whether you're employed by a church or not.
Yep. Man, that's so true. And so let me wrap it up with a clear call to action as far as this conversation goes, and that is this. Pastor, if you are on this Entree Pastor journey, you're in ministry, you see yourself as called to that. That's great. Praise God for that. But you're also in the marketplace, which, by the way, is ministry. You have to be comfortable asking for the sale. You have to get to that point where you recognize, without sales, my business does not succeed. So the call to action is go sell some stuff, whatever your stuff is, whatever service or product that you are serving people through selling. Get about the business of serving some people this week and get over the narratives, the unhelpful self-talk, the flawed mindset, the wrong perceptions that you have around this stuff, and just get healthy, man. Get healthy about selling. And then the more people you serve, the more sales you're making, the better your business is doing. So how's that for an episode, Les? You good with that?
I'm good with that. And if we can help anybody in any way, if you want to drill down more or find out more about the subject, then man, we're pretty safe. So just reach out to us and we'll do what we can to help.
Yeah, you bet. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entree Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entree Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entree Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entree Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.